tonight, and of course we're having the third of the Humboldt County Budget Roadshows, and this is for the best 3 districts. So thank you for being here. We've got Supervisor Wilson in the crowd. We've got Supervisor Bone is here somewhere, and then myself. So at this point in time, I'm going to turn this over to tonight's facilitator, the amazing Heather Equinos.
Oh, thank you. So I wanted to share the game plan for this evening and propose to you what we intend to accomplish together. So by the end of tonight, and we are aiming to close no later than 7:30, here are the desired outcomes. They're also on the screen, but I will read them in detail here. So at this meeting, as with all of the 4 public meetings that we're doing for the Budget Roadshow, here are desired outcomes. 1, we would all leave with an increased understanding of the county's current financial status, including its financial obligations and the anticipated annual budget allocations. So that's sharing some information. That's going to take all of maybe 10 minutes of the meeting tonight. Here is the bulk of what we hope to accomplish together. That we would all leave with an understanding of community members, your input about what's working and what you would like to see improved with county services. So that's the bulk of how we're proposing we spend our time together tonight. So once I sort of explain what it is we're proposing in terms of the agenda and our conversation agreements, here's how we're proposing we use our time. We will hear a pretty brief presentation from Amy Nilsson, the Chief Administrative Officer for the county, about the budget itself. And then we are going to break into small groups and have table conversations with department heads who are all represented here tonight. You will have a chance to have 2 rounds of conversations with departments of your choice. At the end of those 2 rounds, there'll be a quick synthesizing process. We would love to sort of pull up on the key themes or insights that came from your small group conversations, and we will have a spicy and brief report out from department heads and county staff. Just so even if we're obviously not going to be able to visit every single table, we wanted to ensure that everybody had a flavor of what transpired at the tables. We will close, just reminding folks of next steps, and we have a quick evaluation for you that we really are hoping you complete. We anticipate closing no later than 7:30 tonight. So my role, again, my name's Heather Equinos. I'm a local consultant and facilitator. My job tonight is to help you all achieve these outcomes, stay on topic and on time, and to ensure that help you all have good conversations together. At the tables, when you're having small group conversations, there are department heads that will be there taking notes, or they'll be asking one of you to take notes if they would like assistance with that. But their job is to also facilitate your small group conversations, because we are assuming that because you came out tonight, you have something you would like to share and say. So we want to make space for everybody to be able to contribute your ideas at your tables. Decision-making. This is not a decision-making meeting. This is a public input meeting on the budget. It is the Board of Supervisors who make the ultimate decision about the budget. And Amy will go into the timeline and process around that. There is interpretation, Spanish interpretation tonight, simultaneous interpretation. So that will be happening simultaneously. Monica is in the back and will be assisting with that simultaneous interpretation. Thank you, Monica. Access Humboldt is here tonight. Access Humboldt will be recording this meeting, will be editing it, and will be broadcasting it on Access Humboldt. Yeah, Access Humboldt, thank you. All right. So, in order for us to all have good conversations tonight, we have a proposal about how we have conversation. So here's the proposal. We are proposing that you listen to understand one another first. Meaning, it'd be great if you shared the airtime and were succinct, especially in your small group conversations. We want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak and share. We're proposing that you let people finish what they're saying. In other words, not interrupting them midstream. We're asking that you, if you truly don't understand what someone's saying, that you ask questions of curiosity to clarify, to deepen your understanding of another person's point of view. And we're asking that even though we have facilitators at the table, each of you encourage others to contribute. That could be non-verbally, that could be verbally. And if you could support the timeline by staying on topic and on time, we would greatly appreciate it. So, are you with me on those conversation agreements? Lovely. All right, I think that's it from me. I'm going to turn it over to Amy Nilsson for a presentation.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you all for being here tonight. This is a great time of year for us to come together and hear your thoughts about how the county is doing and for us to also share some information with you. So again, my name is Amy Nilsson. My role is the County Administrative Officer, and I am largely responsible for implementing the policies that the Board of Supervisors adopts. And before I get too far in my presentation, there's a lot of county staff here tonight that are here to help answer questions. So if you, county staff, if you could just stand up and wave your arms. So if you have questions about the county, these are the folks that you can go to. And we have various tables for you to do that tonight. So I want to be brief and get you on to the next portion of our meeting, which is obviously to meet with individual departments. First, though, I want to let you know how we use some of the feedback that we received last year regarding some of the, feedback we received last year, the issues that are facing the county, and then the opportunities that lie ahead. So hopefully I will provide you with some context as you enter your discussions with our table matter experts. So last year the focus of our budget roadshow revolved around Measure S, the cannabis cultivation excise tax, passed by voters in 2016. The community let us know which services they wanted to see created or enhanced in the new era of cannabis legalization. As you can see, children and family mental health services was obviously a very big priority for the community last year. To address this need, the county partnered with First 5, Humboldt, and invested an additional $400,000 in an innovative approach to deal with what is called ACEs, or Adverse Childhood Experiences. Humboldt County has the highest rate of ACEs in the state, and according to First 5, this is a predictor of difficulties later on in life. This approach allows mental health practitioners to meet children and families where they are, whether this is in a family resource centers, playgroups, or other areas they spend time, and work with them to provide the support they need to recover from their experiences. Nope, hold on. Other county services. We heard a lot from residents that you want to see improved roads. Most of our funding for roads comes from the state or federal government. In fiscal year 2017-18, the board allocated nearly $2 million in general fund dollars, and more recently they allocated an additional $500,000 to roads. This translates to more than 40 miles in roads improvement. Much more work needs to be done, but this is a priority for our residents and the county. There's a lot more that has been done in the past year, including 2 more sheriff's deputies and increasing code enforcement to battle the effects of illegal marijuana grows. Going forward, Measure S in the cannabis industry as a whole is incredibly uncertain. We simply don't have the data to give us a good indication of what may come next, not to mention the uncertainty at the federal level. However, we are taking steps to increase compliance with local laws, trying to get permits issued to those who wish to cultivate, and Humboldt County will also be on the ground floor of a multi-county effort to help encourage banking of the cannabis industry. Now, let's pull back a little bit and try to take a broad view of the county as a whole. I'll try to lay out some of the challenges first and then leave you with some good news before we head off to talk to departments. On the national level, the economy has been doing well. Unemployment has continued its decline, wages are slowly starting to increase, and consumer confidence is at a near-time high. The economy is currently in its 9th year of expansion, and all signs point to that continuing next year. If that happens, it will be the longest period of growth in our history. This is good news, but we cannot be lulled into thinking this will last forever. Recessions usually happen roughly 5 years apart, so the question now isn't if another recession will happen, but when. The best data we have says we could begin another recession as soon as the summer or fall of next year. Locally, a recession not only affects revenues like sales tax, property tax, hotel tax, but it also often means that more people will rely on county services. Revenues can go down while demand for services increase in these scenarios, so long story short, we must be ready for the next recession. That brings us to the federal government. The federal government is currently facing a mountain of debt, and it was most recently increased by last year's tax reform package, which added $1.5 trillion to the national debt. At the same time, baby boomers are retiring, and similar to the recession scenario, this is putting more of a demand on services like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. These factors and many others are obviously straining on the national budget, and the current Congress has already broached the idea of making dramatic cuts to domestic spending. If that were to be realized locally, that would likely mean less federal funding for programs, specifically social services. To bring it back down to Humboldt County, we are dealing with several issues that constrain our ability to expand or provide new services to the public. As you may have heard, 2 years ago, the Department of Justice ordered the county to make significant changes to its services, programs, and facilities in order to become compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. This is incredibly important, but it's also very expensive. Last year, per a Department of Justice requirement, we hired an independent licensed architect to help us identify the exact work that we needed to do. To date, we have identified $25 million in work that needs to be done over the next several years, including $7.5 million in curb ramp improvements, which we anticipate beginning in fiscal year 18-19. This entire ADA effort is long overdue and will forever change the way Humboldt County does business. However, it is better that we do it now rather than allow the Department of Justice to dictate this work, which would no doubt end up costing us significantly more in the end. Retirement. I hate to continue to beat the retirement drum about costs, but they continue to increase, and it accounts for a significant piece of the county's budget. To make matters worse, last year CalPERS lowered their return on investment, which means that cities and counties will need to make up the difference. We estimate the county will pay $32.2 million towards retirement in fiscal year 18-19, and that number will continue to rise each year. To put this into context, 10 years ago we spent just $17 million. Our costs have nearly doubled in a decade. In 2000, that number was down to $4.7 million. Of the $32.2 million, $12.5 million is estimated to come from the general fund in fiscal year 18-19. This is a 9.8% increase over last year. I mentioned the general fund because this is the fund that houses our discretionary revenue that we can spend on local needs. Estimates for 19-20 are $13.9 million in general fund contributions, which would be another 11% increase. Briefly, I mentioned the general fund, and again, this is the fund that houses our discretionary revenue that can be spent on local needs. As you can see from this chart, the majority of our discretionary revenue is spent on law and justice, and a very small percentage is spent on health and human services, as they're mainly state and federally funded. I'll try to quickly address those last three big challenges. Deferred maintenance. We have a huge backlog of work that needs to be done on our facilities, particularly veterans halls around the county that need work, to the public defender's office and the courthouse, both of which have leaking roofs. So we need to put aside more funding to repair public facilities. Savings. The county's general reserve or rainy day fund is not at the level it should be. Some people say it should be 16% of general fund revenues, while others say 10%. We're around 3%. We need these funds to weather economic tough times or emergencies. The good news is that the board just adopted a policy to put more money towards our rainy day fund, and if all goes well, we should be around 10% in 5 to 7 years. Expenditures versus revenues. On a year-by-year basis, we are simply expecting to spend more money than we take in. We have been able to weather these scenarios by delaying hiring and other short-term fixes. To ensure we are fiscally sound, we either need to do more to increase revenues or decrease our expenditures. So, on to the good news. With challenges come opportunities, and here are a few of our opportunities. On the state front, because typically the state has been a challenge for us in past years, and that has now been we've now made a shift. California has successfully paid down its wall of debt, which was up to $20 billion in 2010. It has funded its rainy day fund, and again, financially speaking, is well positioned to handle the inevitable coming downturn in the economy. This is good news as it provides us more confidence that we will continue to be able to count on funding for services like prison realignment and children and mental health services. Finally, the legislature last year increased the gas tax for the first time in a long time, and while a tax increase may not be good for some, it does provide the county with significant funding, $73 million over 10 years to fix our roads. Retirement stabilization. To combat our rising retirement costs, the board a few years ago decided to participate in a retirement stabilization plan. The way this works is that basically we invest money into a trust fund, then the county we invest money in a trust fund outside the county, which allows us to invest more aggressively than the county treasury allows. The idea is that this money grows year after year, and when the time is right, likely at a point that we cannot afford CalPERS, we'll put this money towards retirement, which would to some extent level off the increases. More and more governments are taking part in this idea, and it's one way we can protect ourselves in the long term. One-stop shop. So if you've ever had to get a building permit from the county, you know that you have to go to multiple sites and make multiple trips to multiple departments. And so what we're planning on doing is housing all the permit functions into one facility. So we are working on this project and we're hoping to put them all under one roof in one location soon. And hopefully this will make it easier for citizens to do business with the county. Measure S. I talked about Measure S and the work that has been done since it passed in 2016. We must continue to work to get cultivators permitted, to ease the burden on our environment, disincentivize the illegal market, and strengthen our local economy. Measure Z. One challenge I didn't mention earlier was public safety. Since Measure Z was passed in 2014, more than 70 new public safety projects have been funded. Rural deputies and outstations have returned to the farthest parts of our county. Volunteer fire departments are finally receiving much-needed equipment, and there have never been as many local resources dedicated to prosecuting crime as there are now. The Citizens Advisory Committee on Measure Z expenditures is currently evaluating applications to fund more public safety projects in fiscal year 18-19 and should have recommendations in April. It should be noted that Measure Z is set to expire in April of 2020 unless it is renewed by voters. Many of the projects that have been funded by Measure Z address local needs and issues that are unique to Humboldt County, and it is very difficult and if not impossible to draw down state and federal funding to address these local needs. So the future of Measure Z will have a dramatic impact on our ability to, again, address our local needs. So tonight, we are looking for your help. We want to hear about what county services have benefited you and what county services need improvement without expending a lot of additional financial resources, since we do have some fiscal challenges. We plan to take the feedback from this meeting and other roadshow stops and turn them into performance measures that we can track throughout the year. That reminds me, please be sure to leave your name and contact information on the sign-in sheet, because as we develop the performance measures, we're going to send them out to all of you to receive some feedback before we incorporate them into our fiscal year 18-19 budget process. And then we hope to report back to you next year on how we did. And finally, I need to let you know the next steps on the budget development process. Over the next few months, departments will be preparing their fiscal year 18-19 budgets, estimating expenses and revenues, and determining new directions for their programs. The proposed budget will go to the board on June 5th, and we will hold 2 public hearings on June 18th. Finally, the budget is tentatively set to be adopted on June 26th. There is a lot of work ahead, but it is important work, and it begins in forums like these with engaged citizens like you. So thank you again for being here tonight, and please remember that the board will be going over the budget in June on June 5th and June 18th. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say this evening. And with that, I will turn it back over to Heather.
Thanks, Amy. All right. Let's give her a hand. She just dropped a bunch of information on us. All right. So, as you might have guessed from the way in which I opened the meeting, this is not a 3-minute at the mic kind of a meeting. The intent of this is to have deeper conversation, more sustained conversation with your neighbors, with county staff members. And so that's what we're up to next. In a moment, once I do some explanation about how this is going to work, you are going to move to one of the round tables of your choice. You will have an opportunity to have 2 rounds of conversation. So you will have 1 round of conversation at one department's table, and then I will ring a bell and you will have an opportunity to move to another table and have a second conversation with your neighbors, with county staff members. So who is here tonight? We have tables around the room, and I will walk through where each of these departments is located. But in the room with us tonight, we have members of the Sheriff's Office, Probation, Planning and Building, Public Works, the Department of Health and Human Services, the CAO's office, the District Attorney's office, and we have 2 tables that we have deemed to be general. So choose your own adventure kind of tables. So over here, is a CAO's office table. Actually, I'm going to go down the row this way. We have a Health and Human Services table here, and then in the back, we have 3 tables with Sheriff's Office representatives. 3. We have a table where you will get to talk with the District Attorney. We have a table in the middle for general. If there's something that you want to talk about that isn't getting picked up at any of the other tables, general is your place, if you would so choose to be. Planning and building is in the back. There is a second planning and building table in the back as well. We have a public works table here. This is another CAO's office table here. We have another general table right here, along with general there too, right, Mike? Yeah, and probation in the back corner. Thank you, probation. So those are all of the tables. Since you get to go to 2 tables and 2 different rounds, if you show up at a table this first round and it looks kind of crowded, I would just suggest you maybe go to your second choice and come back to that first table once it's less crowded on the second round. And I will be keeping time and giving you some warnings about like when time is closing out. So I'm anticipating you'll have about 12 to 15 minutes at each of these tables. Are there questions about the process as I just described it? No? Okay, cool. Again, we will be taking notes. You may be called upon to help in the note-taking process if your facilitator asks it of you. So, all right, well, enjoy your conversation. Please find a place where you would like to have a first conversation. The CAO's office is going to go first. They are going to demo what spicy and brief looks like. in terms of a report out process, and they are setting the bar for everyone else. Next up, we are going to hear from tables that were the general tables. Yes. There are 2. Then we're going to hear from the district attorney. Then we're going to hear from the 2 tables that talked about the Department of Health and Human Services. And then I think there was 1 table for Public Works. Am I on target there? Cool. And planning and building, we had 1. Probation, we had 1. And the sheriff's office, you already combined. You did the mind meld. Thank you, Norma. So we're going to hear the 1 mind meld from the sheriff's office. Sound good? All right, so that's the order. I don't know.
All right.
Thank you.
So the county administrative office table, we had a whopping 3 participants. So thank you to the 3 participants who wanted to learn more about the county administrative office. I really appreciate it. So one of the things that came up was efficiencies in general county operations. So working on that, which is definitely something we can do. Records, financial software. The second item that came up was economic development, making sure that we're vision-focused, future-focused, and really looking at the opportunities that are out there for us. And then communication. The more communication that we can share with people out in the community about what we're doing at the county just benefits all of us. So that's an example of spicy and brief.
All right. We had a general table, and we had 2 definitely the best groups. I'll just throw that marker down right now. We talked about mental health. We have a lot of community centers in our community where they can serve as incubators for people to get early childhood services, for people that are going through the criminal justice system to come and get services, get work skills, things like that. And so things like the Jefferson Community Center are great places where people can rehabilitate and come back into the community. We talked about transportation, improving our roads, improving our trail system, getting more park and rides out in the community, and getting public services closer to the public transit system. And lastly, one of the important things that we talked about was public safety, was prosecuting the bad actors in the cannabis industry, but also making our communities safer places because it ties into tourism. People want to go to places where they feel safe. And so the more that we can do that, the more attractive our community will be to outsiders. Spicy and brief. Thank you.
The great state of general number 2. Okay, this is going to be really brief because I think we really distilled it down. So in terms of our what a consistent theme for both tables was really kind of actually a thankfulness regards to measures Z and S and the resources they brought into the community and the transparent processes by which we're getting those resources back out into the community. And so that was a big one. Another one was there was a consistent emphasis on or there's a request for even more emphasis on early prevention and intervention related to our youth and relates to the ACEs and issues like human trafficking. So really talking about trying to prevent those things from occurring at a very early stage. And then I think there's a reoccurrence on a theme too, which was really about walkable communities, basically making human-friendly transportation systems related to sidewalks, trails, crosswalks, those sorts of things. That's us in a very brief nutshell.
Thank you so much. Awesome. That's perfect. So with regards to services that have been beneficial to our community, we talked about the increase in vertical prosecution, which is when one prosecutor, one DA investigator, and one victim witness advocate stays with that victim throughout the whole process. So we do it for children crimes, domestic violence crimes. We're doing it now for elder abuse crimes. We do it for homicide. So the goal is that really helps those people as they go through the process. the solution for the interpreter issue that we had for civil cases in the court that we participated in helping solve, and then community outreach. And then down at the bottom is where I highlighted the improve the services that we got from the two groups. And those included how we address human trafficking, and it was also suggested we might start with really some solid data collection so we understand the magnitude of the problem. How do we improving the trauma-informed practices and responses by all those involved in the criminal justice system, and then also adequate funding for staffing and experts for court, as well as experts within the office to deal with the amount of digital evidence we receive, technological advances that are being made. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I'm Connie Beck. I got to spend time half at one table and half at the other, so I have Stephanie here from Child Welfare Services. She's the director. She's going to do one part, and Jeremy Nielsen to do the other.
So our table was very spicy. They came up with lots of ideas and a lot of input, and so a lot of the same common themes. Of course, trauma-informed care, training, and awareness for the community and all service providers, including schools and anyone that works with children and families. Secondly, ACEs prevention, especially 0 to 8 mental health services, as well as all throughout the continuum of age. And then school-based services, especially in the small and rural areas and schools.
I think our table was spicier. We talked about tacos and enchiladas, and I think because we're all hungry. It's almost dinner time, right? Now, the main things that came up for both of our sessions was an appreciation for the funding that was directed towards ACEs and trauma-informed care, and the desire to really expand and continue the funding for those services. What was also expressed is a need to expand services across the entire age spectrum of our communities. There's a lot of focus on children, but there are community members of all ages that have needs in our community. That could be individuals, the homeless population, individuals without dependents, and so there was a lot of discussion about how we expand and look at the full spectrum of ages, and then also for the Department of Health and Human Services doing a better job of communicating what services we actually already have in place, because there are a lot of things that we do that the community is not aware of. And then the final one is IHSS services, more funding and better training, which will also help in retention for those staff providing those services.
Yes, we have to follow instructions. Number one, of course, is for Public Works is roads. The bad shape of the roads, they needed the maintenance they need, the drainage that needs to be fixed. The drainage that needs to be fixed and chronic flooding locations that could be addressed. Next on our list was improving our county parks, not just the parks themselves, but the access to the parks, the facilities, maybe improving programs for youth, which we don't have at this time. And then consolidating county buildings. County's departments are spread all over the place, and as was mentioned in the preamble, we're looking at ways to make ourselves more efficient and consolidate to get out of all of our older buildings to more better, more efficient, newer buildings. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is John Ford. I'm with the Planning and Building Department. So our groups tried to take on all of the big topics of the day. And the first was to make sure that the cannabis industry is successful in Humboldt County. The second is to make sure that we have a strong and vibrant economy and to focus on economic development and making sure the processes encourage that. And the third is to focus on affordable housing and transportation and those relationships, making it possible for affordable housing to be built in Humboldt County. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Ray Watson, and I'm with the Humboldt County Probation Department. And in our groups, we actually had a couple of former teachers, and so the theme has kind of been similar to some of the other groups that we've heard today. And we really focused on ACEs awareness. That's a very important topic in our community. And so not only educating the staff that are working with the youth, but also the youth to educate them on what ACEs are so they know what they're going through and experiencing these days. So we felt that was really important. Also, improve trauma-informed practices. You know, we're training our staff on trauma-informed, but we're just at the beginning of that work and continuing to push and make sure that we're all identifying those signs and those factors when we're working with youth is important. And lastly, this is not just for the juvenile population we're working with, but also the adults, and that's trying to find ways to create more vocational programs. We really talked about having our clients re-enter the community and not being able to find work. So there were some ideas about maybe having a county work with local businesses to provide wages so we can hire some of these people when they're coming back into our community, and that'll hopefully make them more successful in their transition. So that's what we had. Thank you.
Yes. I got Norma. So, hi, my name is Billy Halsum, your sheriff, and this is Norma Lorenzo. She's our CFO. I also want to introduce a couple of our administrative personnel that are here tonight, Captain Kevin Miller and Lieutenant Brian Quinnell, also here. So, appreciate them being here. So, we had a lot of positives about the Sheriff's Office, and we had great tables, a lot of interactions about all the great things that we're doing. One of the things that we talked about is proactive patrols and being more visible out there and pushing more people and deputies out in the rural areas, and that's all thanks to Measure Z. So Measure Z gave us the ability to do that, and so that is something that we're looking forward to renew this next year, and that's one of the biggest benefits of our agency is Measure Z. One other thing that's working well is Neighborhood Watch, and we just happen to have the Neighborhood Watch coordinator in the house tonight. Ginger Campbell, stand up. So she's right there. That made our top three, that top three is Neighborhood Watch. So it's going very, very well. Community engagement, crime prevention, Neighborhood Watch is something that we really want to promote the Sheriff's Office throughout the county, and it's something that is going to help. And so one thing also is our community engagement. Getting out in the community, hearing from you, and this is a great example of how government works and how government's supposed to work. Listening and hearing feedback and then responding. So one thing that's we're very, very into at the Sheriff's Office, listening and then responding. One thing that we're focused on is our resident deputies. And so that's one thing that we're also going to continue to improve upon. We had to pull one of our resident deputies out of Bridgeville to fill another assignment. We're going to be actively looking for that replacement. But that is one thing that's going to reduce crimes in the outlying areas, and having those resident deputies out in the outlying areas for crime prevention. So that's one thing we're going to continue to focus on, pushing more rural patrols out there. Also, homelessness. Homelessness is not just a problem for, DHHS or, different parts. It's everyone's issue, and everyone should be dealing with it. And so we recognize that as a Sheriff's Office is having an answer to that question. And so we want to be a part of the solution and dealing with that and moving people towards services. And that's something that we are continuing to do, through the help of our partnership with DHHS and Connie Beck and that's it. So that, not as spicy as Jeremy Nilsson, but pretty close. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So before I turn it back over to Amy Nilsson to remind us yet again what happens with all of this information, I just wanted to call your attention to half-sheet pieces of paper on your tables. That's an evaluation form. We would very much appreciate your feedback about your experience at this session tonight. There are Sharpies, and I'm happy to distribute more Sharpies if that would be useful to you. So thank you again for coming out tonight. I'm going to turn it back over to Amy.
So thank you for coming, and just as a reminder, we're going to take this feedback and we're going to turn this into performance measures. So please fill out the sign-in sheet, give us your email address, we'll send these out, we'll get your feedback, and then we plan on incorporating these into the fiscal year 18-19 budget. So please let us know who you are and how we can contact you so you can continue to be involved in the process. And also, June 5th is when we propose the budget, June 18th is when we have public hearings, and June 26th is when we plan on tentatively adopting the budget. So again, thank you for coming out, and I think it's a wrap for the evening. Thank you.